We've visited people sometimes with the TV's on and they're watching a show and they're watching that show till it's done. It's a matter of how important you look at the people that are around you. Are they important enough for you to put aside what you like for a few minutes? God really taught me what believing in Him was about. There were some hard lessons.
Just keeping Christ in the center of your relationship is vital.
I think that's a hard thing too, is being able to say, it's not up to me, it's up to God. God's going to either open that door or He's not.
It did take him a long time, really, to grow up, to mature enough to take on the responsibilities of a marriage and a family. And during that time, it was very much a strain on our relationship.
Yvonne, Brenda, thank you so much for coming on the So What's the Point podcast. Very glad you could make it out here. Traveling out through roads are probably somewhat better now. We've had some rough weather here in the last few days here in Maine. I just want to get started. A little bit backstory of each of you. I don't care what either of you can go first. Just to understand a little bit of your environment growing up and, kind of how you got to where you are today.
I grew up in the Bridgeton area, and just a very small town and not a lot of activity, just a small family. Went to school at Bridgeton High, and I think I was one of the last graduating classes there before it consolidated in the Naples area.
How many people were in your class?
69.
Okay. Interesting. And you said Bridgeton?
Yeah, that building is no longer there.
When would have that been?
I graduated in 1968.
And you went there full time?
The whole time.
The whole
yeah.
time.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting. What was your family like?
Dysfunctional?
Okay.
No, actually, growing up my younger years was really just a small family. Everybody was there for one another, and but that changed, unfortunately. But learned a lot from it.
Yvonne, how about you?
I grew up in Biddeford. I went to St. Louis High School, graduated in '67. I went into the service right after that. Figured if I didn't, I would get in trouble because I wasn't going to college. And so I figured rather than hang around, that's what I did. And no regrets there at all. Went to Vietnam and got through that okay. And came from a big family. We had 7 kids, and which was great because you could just get lost in the family and nobody knew where you were at and going. And in that day and age, you could go out a lot more than you do today. It was safer and that kind of thing. But like I said, I had a great family. My dad was a contractor, so I worked for him a lot in the summer times and stuff like that. So while I was in the military, that's where I met Brenda. So,
is there any specific moments in your childhood that brought you into the service? Was there any specific things that stood out as, oh, this is what I want to do?
Well, my brother was in the service a couple of years ahead of me. He was 3 years older than me. He was in the service. But it really, at that time, it was a different day and age. And people, you either got drafted or you joined. And so I chose to join. To me, it wasn't a negative whatsoever. We went in the service and did the 4 years I was there. And at the end of it, I was done, and it's okay. That was part of my life, and off I went. I learned a lot. It's when you go from Maine back in the 60s to out in the rest of the world. A good friend of mine was a black guy, and I asked him, he asked me, how many people I knew that were black in Maine. I said, none. Okay. I said, I never saw a live black man until I went into the service. Okay. And he just laughed at me and stuff. He grew up in Scarborough, Maine. Okay. I didn't know that at the time until he told me. And his father trained horses. And that's where he was at. He was in Scarborough training with his dad, and that's where he grew up and stuff. So it was kind of interesting to, that kind of meeting people that were, and I think I've always been, let's go someplace and meet somebody type thing. I don't have a problem with that.
So you are more of a people person. You like to go out and meet.
Well, yeah, yes and no. I was a contractor for a lot of years, so you do that anyways. Brenda and I have different personalities. We're very opposite in a lot of ways, and I think that that's not a negative. We've learned to accent each other
Hmm.
stuff, and that's why it's been a long. We've been together for so long.
Mm. Now I have kind of a two-part question here. First one's more for context, and I'll need an answer for both of you. This is on Maine when you're growing up, because there's a little bit ago, and I believe Maine, there's a lot more people here nowadays. But from your guys' understanding, you guys both grew up here and like fully, you
Yeah.
never moved away to come back
Yes,
during the time growing up.
not while we're
Not growing up.
not
Okay.
growing up.
What was Maine like, just for context, and I might lose some viewers here who aren't from Maine, but what was Maine like when you were growing up to now in today's age in 2026?
Well, for me, it was a very small world.
Mm.
We did not do any traveling to speak of. We're a small family, and the town was much different than it is now. There was not a lot of activity other than if you were involved in, different sports in school and that kind of thing. It's really the only thing that was going on.
Interesting.
Once in a while, you could go to the movie theater, which I didn't do that much, but mostly my activity was interactive with other students and activities in school. But my life beyond that was my grandparents lived in Casco area. So that's about as far as I got from home until I got my early teen years. My grandparents on the other side of the family lived in Massachusetts, so we got to go and spend a week there in the summer. But other than that, I did not do a lot of traveling, and my world, comparatively speaking, seemed very small back then.
Well, I grew up in Biddeford, and this was before the big box stores and all that. You could go downtown on a Friday night, and there was so many people you couldn't walk on the sidewalk. It was that busy, like you would see in a movie and stuff. And so everybody was out. They would go bowling, they would go shopping. There was just a ton of people, and Old Orchard Beach was 5 miles away, and when I was in high school, we just walked to the beach. Okay, that's just the way it was. I never even thought of asking my dad for a ride, but that just wasn't. My dad worked 3 jobs all of his life and stuff, and he was just one of those guys that did that. It was a time that was a lot of fun. It was safe to be outside late at night. It was different than it is today. Today, 8 o'clock at night, you drive down the road and there's nobody there. Nobody play. We were outside all the time. My mom would say, "You're outside, just be back before it gets dark, or else," and that kind of thing. And we would be outside all day long, and we didn't need half the toys that they have today. If we had a cardboard box, we went sliding, that kind of thing. So it's kind of a little different than what you see today.
Think that change is for the better or the worse?
In some ways, I think it's for the worse, because I think back then you socialized more, you made friends easier, you spent time with them. Today, you really have to be actively looking to be around your friends. Whereas before, you went outside, there was always 10 kids wandering around someplace, and you'd find something to do, and you'd play all day long. If you had a where they plowed a hill, then king of the hill, somebody be on top, and everybody's trying to knock them off. That's just the way it was, and it was a lot of fun. You went home at night, you were tired, you weren't on the phone, you weren't on. Matter of fact, we were at a doctor's office yesterday, and we got in there, and there was about 10, 12 people, and I'm not talking kids, I'm talking my age and up, and they're all on their phone, every one of them. Am I right, Brenda? It's kind of like sitting there going, I mean, what is it? World has changed. That's the thing.
We're the only two talking to each other.
We're the only two talking. Everybody else is on their phone. Whether they're playing games or whatever they do. So.
this actually brings up a really good point. Today's age, I mean, you walk into a restaurant and 90% of people are on their phones, even if they're sitting with a significant other or maybe some friends they went out and but they're not really connected. From your point of view, and also the understanding of life before the phone became this huge thing, what is the importance of just having that one-to-one connection with somebody, and how does that help grow a relationship with them long term?
You want to
Okay.
tackle that one?
Go ahead, you go first.
I'm not a big fan of texting
Mm.
because people tend to say things when they text that they would never say to somebody's face. You don't build a relationship when you're doing that kind of thing. And I'm not saying it's all bad. Don't get me wrong. There's a place. I'm saying there's a place for it. If we go out to a restaurant and we take our grandkids who are now in their 20s, we pick a restaurant that doesn't have a TV in it. Okay, because they're sitting there staring at the TV. When I grew up, if you got to watch TV on a Saturday morning, you watch a few cartoons and you might watch a show on the weekend,
Yeah.
but during the week, the TV was just never on. And if it was to catch the weather or some kind of news, that kind of thing. So it was just different. So, is it better? Is it worse? Hard to tell. I think that the dependence on them is kind of more than it should be. Let's put it that way. You take a kid's phone away from them now and from school, and you're likely to have a riot, okay, on your hands. I don't know that they need to have that the whole time.
Yeah.
But it's a different world that I grew up in. That's all. So
I find that we don't even think about taking our phones out if we go out to dinner or something. We've been married for a long time, but we still are learning things about one another. There's always an opportunity to grow closer to other people, and I think you just have to, take advantage of those times, because there are moments that don't come all the time.
that's why I think the importance of having small groups in the church are, you wouldn't think in a small group of pulling out your phone and doing that, but yet you do it with your family. You do it with your friends. We've visited people sometimes with the TV's on and they're watching a show and they're watching that show till it's done. And even though you're there, I would never, it wouldn't happen. Okay. I don't care what's on, it goes off, that kind of thing. So it's just, it's a matter of how you look at the world, how important you look at the people that are around you too. Are they important enough for you to put aside what you like for a few minutes?
When we talk about church, I always like to get a little bit of your backstory on when you first went and kind of your experience with it. Did either of you grow up going to church, or was this something that happened a little bit later on?
Well, I grew up going to church. My mom made sure that my sister and I got to Sunday school, and honestly, I don't remember a lot of time when my parents were both there, but at least she made the effort to make sure that we were educated in that area. I'm very thankful for that, because I know that she had to go out of her way to do that. It wasn't a whole family celebration time, but my grandmother was a prayer warrior, and I just thank her for her intercession for us. And I'm sure that as grandparents ourselves, we know how important that is. And when I was about 8 years old, we moved to an area where I was within walking distance of the church. And for a while, our family came together, and my dad and mom went to church with us. And we were all baptized together. And I don't know exactly what happened, but shortly after that, my parents stopped going to church. And so there were many days when I just walked to church. Whenever there was something going on there, that's where I went. And so I'm thankful that God arranged that for me, because I don't know what would have happened at that point if I would have continued being able to go. Um, because I was still pretty young, so I wasn't driving a car or anything.
Yeah.
So I was thankful for that opportunity.
I grew up in a Catholic family. We went to church every Sunday. It was the I learned a lot of things, and a lot of them weren't necessarily religious. It was more of some of the things that I learned. I went, my God is not that petty. My God is. I always believed that was God. There was never a question, and I believed in Jesus Christ. I don't believe that I was saved at that point in time. Um, at least I didn't act it. Let's put it that way. In growing up.
I didn't date guys like him.
But it's funny what you learn. I learned through my mom. She was a, I don't know if you'd call her a prayer warrior. I don't know if Catholic Church would even accept that. I don't know, but she really believed in prayer and that God would answer prayer. I'll give you a little example. When I was 5 years old, I got run over by a truck. I got my it was pretty serious. I got dragged down the hill and into a house type thing. Popped my eyeball out of my head, and they were going to cut it out. And my mom said, "No, take him back to the hospital. Put his eye back in." I probably was in the I was 5 years old, so I don't remember. This is what I've heard. Okay, and she says, "I'll go home and pray, and he's going to be fine." And to this day, the doctors can't tell which eye it was. Okay, and I do have pictures of myself in the hospital with a ray gun, but you can never tell if it's right or left type thing, And it taught me that even then I'm sitting there going, wow, she really believes. The faith aspect of it, and I think that that's a hard thing to learn for most people, is to have a faith that God is able to do anything. So I learned that through my family. Going past that to get saved, by that time, Brenda we got married. Again, my mom wanted my dad to go to a retreat in a Catholic church, and he wouldn't go unless he thought he was going to get out of it, and said, I'll go if he goes, And so I said I'd go, and so we went, and that's where that's where I really uh, believed that God was involved in my life. We got home. I got home from that weekend, and Brenda and I decided. Said, I really want to know what this is about. And we went to several Catholic churches and just didn't get fed. And so she had been in the Protestant church. She'd converted to Catholic. I'm telling you a story here to an extent. And then she said, well, let's go to a Protestant church. And the first time I went, wow, there was so much more of the word being fed that I was just amazed. And I started right then and there. Every night I would read the Bible. And believe me, it was an old King James with 1,000 of these in it. And I read every night. And sometimes it was only 10 minutes, but for the last 50 years, I've been reading, and I'm still hungry for the word and stuff. So,
Brenda, when did faith become real for you?
Well, believe it or not, I was 5 years old, and I was playing in the woods behind my house. I was by myself, and I was sitting on a log, thinking about things that I'd learned at church, and I was looking out into the woods, and there was this huge ray of the sunlight shining through, and I just knew that if I stood over there, I was going to find God. And so it was an amazing experience that um, I'm sure a lot of people can't really relate to, but I ran over to that ray of sun, and I just stood there with my arms out, and I experienced the presence of the Holy Spirit. And even though I went through, the teenage years of, growing up,
Yeah.
that was my very first experience, and it was very powerful. And I've always treasured that. And that was my first experience of really knowing that God was real and there for me, and that I wasn't alone.
what is the importance of, let's say, shutting the phone off and just going to somewhere quiet to think for a little bit? I feel like we miss that because there's so much stimulus being put out through all this technology that we get caught up in it. Sometimes I find myself caught up in it. But what is that importance to you guys growing up in a time where you didn't have this device trying to get your attention every minute?
Taking the time to not only pray, but to listen. And that's something that, even as old as we are, I feel that that's something that we're always learning. And just recently, I believe that God is calling us to be more watchmen on the wall, so to speak, and being more purposeful and specific in our prayers, and then also taking the time to just be still, to be in His presence.
The worship aspect is really different for everybody, and Brenda and I have argued over this over the years.
It's a discussion.
What? A discussion. Okay, discussion. She loves music, and I couldn't carry a tune in a bucket. Okay, I have a terrible memory, which, to be honest with you, I look as a gift because I believe either God made me this way or it happened when I was in that accident. I'm not sure what, but I can't remember the words to Jingle Bells. Okay, I mean it's that bad for me. Worship is. I turn the music off. It's personal. It's me and God, and humbling myself. And there were times when we went through some hard times when I was on my face on the floor. God really taught me what believing in Him was about, and it was some hard lessons. So I think it's really that worship aspect is very different for Brenda. It's the music. So when you guys are all worshiping, I've gone to worship services at church. And I have a little bit of a hard time because I'm going, they're all singing and this is great. I like the quiet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just different. That's all, but I do really believe that that's how it gets personal. Don't get me wrong. I do. I've learned to love the music. I'm probably half of it's. I have terrible hearing. As a matter of fact, I have one hearing aid on right now. The other one's being fixed. So I think half the words I don't hear in the music. So it is what it is, But I've learned that for me to worship, I'll go in the room and turn off the lights and just spend time with God, And so it's just different, and I'm sure it's different for everybody. I'm sure because the relationships. That's how relationships are. Your relationship with your mom and your dad even are two different relationships completely. Okay. And so with God, it's even going to be different than that,
I would like to add that quiet time is very important to me as well. It's just that I also appreciate and just really embrace the music and the worship to be able to give back to the Lord.
Now, I know you mentioned this a little bit ago, but could you give me the story of the first time you guys met?
I'll let Brenda do that one. That way I don't get in trouble.
He was in the service at the time and stationed in California. I had gone out to California to visit a friend for about a week, and they threw a party for me before I came back home. And he came to the party. We met there, and he was coming home on leave like the day after I was flying back home, and asked if he could call me. So I said, sure. we kind of hit it off, but I wasn't, terribly impressed at first. But since I wasn't dating anyone, I thought, sure, give me a call. Let's do something. And so he came home, and he was home for about a week, and we ended up seeing each other every day that he was home. And most of our courtship was long distance because he was, as I said, stationed in California. And so I think it was just about every day from then until he came home, I either got a letter or a phone call. I heard from him every day that we weren't together. So that was the beginning.
Mm.
So, and then he came home. He got out of this. That was in January of that year, and in August he was discharged from the service. In September we were engaged, and in November we were married. And I would never have believed that that would happen, but it's worked
Mm.
with God in the middle.
Yeah, amen to that. And we are opposites in a lot of ways. We dislike and like different things and all that. But it's a real asset in that we both realized that we were opposites, and we said we learned to work. Think, okay, this is okay. It's all right that I'm not. I don't do the same. I don't like the same music. I don't like this, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And it's become a strength rather than a weakness. I feel that Brenda completes me, and I hope that I complete her to an extent. And she's the kind of she's a type A personality. She gets up in the morning and she's got a list and she knows what she's doing. And she says, "What are you doing today?" I don't know. Whatever. I'll figure it out as I go along. Okay. It's over the years, especially in the beginning, we read a few books on personality types and that kind of thing. And there's some real good ones out there. I won't name any of them. It is. And Brenda is that type A personality. And basically, I'm like to have a lot of fun, and I'm basically lazy. Okay, according to the things. But one thing I did learn from him is that's the way you are right then. It just gives you a place to. This is how I can change. This is what I got to do. At the time, I was I worked for somebody else, and I decided, you know what? If I wanted to be a businessman. My father was always self-employed and that kind of thing. So I just decided I've got to change, and that's hard. I'm sure today, as a kid, I would be diagnosed as ADD, attention deficit disorder, is what they call. I mean, and I knew it even when I was a kid. I would do homework, and if I lasted 5 minutes, I was doing good. Okay, and I was gone. The passing grade was 67, and I was great at hitting 67. Okay. When I went into service, they take a test to see where they're going to put you. And they put me in electronics, and I'm going, really? I just, and it's just that what happened, in school, I just wasn't interested. I went because I had to go to school. I don't recommend that to anybody, but that's the way it was, at the time. So
I'd just like to interject the fact that, we were and are very different people. And yet, as we have drawn closer to the Lord, that has obviously drawn us closer to each other. And just keeping Christ in the center of your relationship is vital. I can't even emphasize that enough.
I think the last few years, the statement that is made in the Bible about you'll leave your mom and your dad and you will become one is happening. We see it every year. We sit there and we reevaluate. We go, wow, we've become so much closer. We've God is so awesome. I think it's brought us to the point where we recognize where God is in all the things more and more and more all the time, and it has made us one. We just see all the time things changing and getting closer and more meaningful. So.
Unless we draw closer to the Lord too, I think we are able to see those things more easily.
And you're touching on it, but I'd like to ask the specific question of what is the importance, or maybe pick one or two things, because there's a lot of having a close relationship with God to be able to have a close relationship with somebody else.
Let me give you an example. There are a few of my neighbors who are not Christians, and it allows us to be able to have a friendship with them, but be able to pray for them. And also, they even say there's something different. There's something there. So that relationship with Christ allows the door to be cracked open. I'm not saying that it's always successful, and I'm not saying that I'll ever know how successful or it is or isn't. Um, but it does change the way your relationship goes, I believe. You don't have to be controversial about it all the time. You don't have to, God is the one that's going to bring salvation into their lives. I think that they see uh, the difference in how the relationships are come to.
The word tells us that God is love, and I believe that um, as we spend more time with Him and allow Him more space in our lives, enables us to love others. We don't have to agree with one another, and it's and it's in that truly caring about other people, whether they're saved or not, especially if they're not, we want them to be with us. But He pours that love out into us so that we can pour it into them. And they may not understand what it is, but I know that we've been received in our little community out by the pond. There are very few believers in Christ there, and yet we've been embraced in a way that I know it's God that they see, and so I'm thankful for that.
And it is funny how God works, because here they are, most of them, and they're pretty blunt. We're blunt about how we are, and they're blunt about how they are. And yet we'll go have dinner with them, and they'll say, "Will you bless the food?" They ask us, "Will you?" And if somebody's sick in their family, they'll call us, "Can you pray for it?" And you sit there and go, "Okay, God, whatever." And we pray, and it happens not just once in a while; it happens all the time. And it shows that God is working. I'm not sure where that ends up, where that goes, but that's not up to me. I think that's a hard thing too, is being able to say it's not up to me. It's up to God. God's going to either open that door, He's going to either open their eyes and their hearts, or He's not.
Yeah.
I mean, I often ask the Holy Spirit, you're the one that's going to change what's going on.
Yeah.
And if it's not up to me, we do the best we can in sharing and letting people know where we stand. That's it, without shoving it down their throat type thing. So
prayer, you've mentioned it a few times. For someone who might be listening to this who has never prayed before, maybe they've gone to church a few times, generally understand what the Bible is and who Jesus is. What's a basic description you could give them if you were standing there talking to them?
I think it would have to start with the price that Jesus paid for us in order for them to understand the reason for it. And then sharing the word is powerful, sharing the fact that Christ paid such a price for us, and that He wants to have communion with us. And it can be the same as just sitting across from one another, talking to each other. And it's something that you have to do in order to experience. And so I guess that they would have to do it on faith that what you're telling them is true. And then they'll discover it for themselves, because you know that God's going to meet them there. And that's what they have to experience in order for it to be real to them.
If I'm going to share with somebody about how to pray, okay, my answer would be, talk to God like you would your best friend. We say prayers and we repeat things, and we, rather than, God, I don't know what's going on right now. I just know that I need you to be there with me, and have that passion to share with Him, and to put it at His feet and say, Lord, you know how to deal with this. I don't. And I accept, well, this is the hard part of prayer, is I accept what you're going to do with it. Okay. It's like the guy who cuts you off in his car and you pray for him. That's a hard prayer. That's a hard prayer type thing. And sometimes telling God, it's okay. I accept what you're going to do. And because I know that you're going to do what's best. And that's the difference, I think, is knowing that God is going to do what's best for you and your family or whoever you're praying with. And sometimes the answer is, that person you're praying for does not accept what God wants. And you can't force it,
This is going to be an interesting question.
Here it comes.
Well,
You
we
probably
get
have to
trouble.
think a little bit on this one. What was the hardest point in your marriage, and what helped you get through it?
Well, I think the hardest point in our marriage was the first few years. It generally takes men longer to mature than it does a woman. That's what my experience has been. And so when things weren't happening fast enough for me, when we had communication issues, and it did take him a long time really to grow up, to mature enough to take on the responsibilities of a marriage and a family. And during that time, it was very much a strain on our relationship. I'm thankful that God was revealing himself to the point where I was working at a bank in Portland at the time. And and one of my coworkers invited me to go to a prayer group after we finished our work that day. And I went that evening. And I was so overcome with the power of the Lord that it was a major breakthrough for me to be able to accept the way things were and just let go and let God do his work. And it took a while, but I feel like God just picked me up and said, listen, this is what you need. And I just needed to receive the power that he was giving me and the Holy Spirit to be patient and to be loving and to trust him to work out all of the rough patches that we had to go through.
You want to hear my side, right?
Yeah. I got to hear both.
Brenda is totally right. I got out of the military. After we got married, I figured, well, I had to shave and all that stuff when I was in the military. I'm all done with that. So for the next 5 or 6 years, I had a beard down to here, long hair, and I went to work. Matter of fact, we got married. I didn't even have a job yet. We were struggling. That's when I went away for that retreat and really found the Lord and stuff. But one of the things that's kind of, I think, funny, get on a little bit lighter side here, is a couple of my friends asked me out. They were single, and Brenda said, "Go," So I went. And we went to a bar type thing, and about an hour into it, I'm looking around at these guys, and I go, guys, I love you guys, but I love my wife a whole lot more. I'd rather be home with her. And it was the last time I went out with the guys. Am I right, Brenda? That kind of thing, and just started realizing that I had to make Brenda a priority in my life, not just a sideline type thing. I don't think I ever abused or anything like that, but we just didn't have any direction type thing. And that was part of my personality too, that I had to grow up and say, okay, where am I going with this? What am I responsible for? If I'm responsible for my family, and we had a daughter at the time, it was I had to pick up and make some hard decisions for myself to grow up to an extent.
When did you first find Mossbrook Church?
I'll let Brenda answer that one.
Well, we moved here about 5 years ago, and during the first 2 or 3 months, we were searching for a church and praying. We were walking down the main street in Norway, and we saw your sign for you were going to do some kind of
It's a free meal and a
dinner celebration at the fire station in town. So we decided that we would come and just get to meet some of the people, and that the Lord would show us if that's where we needed to be, or if we wanted to check out other places.
Yep.
So we went that Friday night, and we met some of the nicest people that, I mean, we just felt like we fit in right away. And it's the first time I think that that's ever happened, really. And so we started coming, and the first Sunday that we came was your last Sunday here, when you were parked in the cars.
Outside.
We didn't even realize that you didn't have a building when we came. We just knew that this was the address to come to. So we came that Sunday, and it was raining. And so we parked our car and listened to the sermon. And the next week you were going to the theater. So,
So we
so we
went,
just followed.
at the service over here outside, they asked for volunteers to help clean up over there. So we went. They looked at us, who are you guys? And they didn't know who we were.
But we got to meet a few people that day
we
too.
had a bunch of people there. We washed seats and vacuumed and all that good stuff. Right off the bat, the pastors, and we didn't realize there was two pastors at the time either. We just kind of like, okay, we'll come. We just saw that the word was really being preached truthfully. And so we were attracted. We met some nice people and just got involved. We don't do sideline too well. Usually we end up getting involved somewhere. And this is a unique church in the sense that there's a lot of people who work at this church. And so it's not, 10 people doing everything. It's 150, 200 people doing everything type thing, which is huge.
And it all seems to be being done with the heart.
Yeah.
And that it really shows.
How important is serving to you?
Extremely.
Yeah.
It doesn't function otherwise.
Serving is really important, but also we've been involved for a lot of years in different churches. We're very careful not to serve just because we're asked. We go home and we pray about it. We ask God, where do you want us? Is this something you want us to do? Because doing something just because it needs to be done sometimes takes it away from somebody who should be doing. I think there's a lot of people that don't serve because somebody else quickly steps up to the plate and does it. Sometimes it's nice to hang back and see who, nobody else is going to do this, and you get somebody who's never done anything step up to the plate. And that's a huge, again, it's faith, having faith that God's going to bring the right person to it. It's not that he brings the wrong person, but that one person is doing 15 other things in the church. Maybe he's not the right person for that. He can do the job, but there are times when you have to let the new people rise type thing. And I see a lot of that happening in this church. It's a good thing because it is easy to overdo. There's so many demands that you automatically do them. And sometimes you shouldn't be doing them type thing, even though they need to be done.
What is the importance of church in your life, in your daily life? What role does that play?
For me, I feel that we all have an assignment from the Lord. One of the things that I've always really been involved with is women's ministries, mostly. The Lord is such a part of who I am that I can't see myself not being involved in making a difference and asking God to work through us. We don't always realize, sometimes people will come up to us years later and say, this is what you did, and this is what happened. And that's how they found their way to the Lord. So you don't even know sometimes when God is using you. And so, and also when coming to this area, for example, when we were first looking for the church, it's the best way to meet people, for one thing, and to be community and be a part of the family, which is what God calls us to do. So for me, it's everything.
Having fellowship with other Christians is a big part of being in church, because if you're out in the world doing anything, you're dealing with everybody else. It's a rarity that you go to work someplace with 6 other Christians that you can share with the whole day long. That just doesn't happen, or rarely happens. Let's put it that way. We've led small groups. We've managed groups, so small groups before in different churches and stuff over the years. And I remember the first time we had a pastor in California, and I was growing and realizing that, okay, I need to humble myself. So we went over to the pastor's house and we washed his feet, and we did the whole ceremony type thing, and we're still friends with that pastor today. Um, but I at that time I refused to go to small groups. That's just a waste of time, blah blah blah. And so after I did that, I said, well, okay, I'm like, what do you want me to do? He said, you need to go to a small group. Ah, man, I don't want to go to a small group. So I went to a small group, and right off the bat, God just blessed us. It really, really did, and we learned that's where the fellowship was to a large extent. Being able to grow into giving more time to the Lord. I was a young Christian at that time. One of my strengths, I consider a strength, probably nobody else does, is that is my not being able to memorize things. But what I found is in small groups, people could relate. Oh, yeah, I'm like you. I can't. I said, well, okay. So if somebody asks me something in the Bible, I can tell them that it's in the Bible. They say, where is it? And then you're going to have to go find that yourself, okay? And so it's become a strength, and it draws people that relate to it. Your dad and Pastor Mike are phenomenal. I love to listen to them. I get fed. I learn. I learn every time. You'd think after 50 years, okay, how much more are you going to hear that you haven't heard before, and you do every Sunday type thing. But I also realized a lot of people kind of go, okay, I could never do what he does. I could never do what he does. And I like to encourage the guy who says that he can do. It's not maybe the same way,
Yeah.
but he can relate, he can share. What he has to share, somebody else will take it as a huge leap for them to grow.
Just a comment going back to Mossbrook Church.
Yeah.
We lived in California for 12 years. It was a Holy Spirit teaching time for us. It's a whole different atmosphere out there. And as much as we see all these bad things happening in California, there's a lot that God's doing there. And it was difficult for us to come back here to the East Coast because it's such a totally different spiritual atmosphere. So I feel, and I'm sure he agrees with me, is the fact that we found a treasure in this place. And it's not the same as what we experienced out there, but the life of it is here. And it just, we're just really blessed that God led us here, and we're thankful for that.
There's somebody sitting on the other side of that screen, Gen Z, if you will, someone younger. They're listening to this, and they've thought about going to church. Maybe they've gone once, but they're having a hard time gaining up the courage to be able to actually go. They keep putting it off. What is one thing you could tell them to finally tip them over the edge to go?
Myself, I'd say, I'll go with you. I'll pick you up. Give it a chance to learn what it's about. That's probably the best of it. Give it a chance to learn what it's about. Let the word sink in and go home and think about it and stuff. And God is going to change their hearts and bring them to where He wants them to be at the time. All we can do is share the word with them, and if they're looking, then I think God will open the door for them.
The first thing that came to my mind is asking them the question of, what are you afraid of?
Yeah.
And again, like he said, I'll go with you. And then just leaving the rest of it in God's hand, because He's the one that's going to do the job.
And you just never know when the door is going to be open too. I think that a lot of times you have to be able to plant seeds and just see where it goes. You see a lot of people come to church and leave, doesn't mean that they've rejected it. It means sometimes they got to go home and think about it, or later on something happens in their lives when they go, wow, I need some help, and the door gets opened because of something that happened years ago. Sometimes you do something and you pray for somebody. I want to give you a funny example. We were in a small group in California, and this lady came up for prayer. She had to go to court. She was going to lose her kids and that kind of thing. And so I prayed for her. Now, believe me, I don't even remember this. She's the one that told me this later on, okay? She went to court and told the judge that he wasn't in charge, God was in charge, and she was going to get her kids. And she did. She's telling me this, and I'm going, she says, I told her that. And I'm going, I prayed it, but I don't know. You know how sometimes you're praying and you just kind of, and you go, you don't know what that seed's going to do to that person. You don't know. It might be years later. Brenda got a call one time from somebody we knew, we hadn't seen in 10, 15 years. She was in the hospital. Called Brenda up, said, I need you to come over and pray. And she went. And you sit there and go, what did you do that 10 years later it's still affecting them?
Yeah.
You just don't know. You just plant the seeds and see where it goes. Just keep planting.
Yvonne, Brenda, thank you so much for coming on the So What's the Point podcast. I'm very glad that you could take some time out of your day. Just sit down, have a conversation about life, about marriage, about church and the importance of it in our lives. Please like, comment, subscribe. Hit that notification bell for me so you never miss an episode. And we'll see you next time.